God, it's Friday. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios here in Koko Mlimli on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. Thanks for choosing us. We are Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible journalism. This afternoon, government is considering reopening of land borders as the country records a significant drop in COVID-19 infections. We have details of our recent case counts, plus hear from the Ghana Health Service on the matter. Also this afternoon, 226 Ghanaians successfully evacuated from Ukraine following Russia's invasion. We will interrogate government's evacuation plan here on The Pulse. And possible food shortage looms as government admits it may not be able to provide even half of the budgeted fertilizer for this farming year.
It's very bad. We are doing some serious consideration. We may not be able to supply even half of it because of the price differentials.
And don't forget that we'll find out from the farmers preparing for tough times ahead. Don't forget that you need to stay with us for details of all of these stories here on The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sugan. The Pulse is, as always, brought to you by Global Communities, Dignity Lu, affordable, safe sanitation. Remember that this afternoon we are streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles at JoyNews on TV. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. My personal handle is at Blessed Sugan. Please stay for details. Also, this afternoon, President Akufo-Addo, as we're learning, is likely to ease restrictions as Ghana's land borders. Now, this was actually revealed by the Information Minister, Kojo Nkrumah, who in a recent tweet revealed that the president has been engaged in a series of meetings on this matter. And there you have it on your screens right now, indicating the details of that. It states that yesterday and today, President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has been engaged in meetings in preparation to announce the easing of restrictions at our borders and tackling the escalating fuel prices. We'll get to the issues of the fuel prices later, but this revelation, as we understand, obviously is coming at a time when Ghana's COVID-19 cases are significantly reducing, and fortunately we have all of the figures here for you. You can see it here, 7 new cases. That's what we've confirmed from the Ghana Health Service portal, which you have right here on your screens. And we also have active cases being 74, and the total number of confirmed cases across the country is 160,777. But in terms of the recoveries and discharges, we have 159,256 cases. So that's what we have. But the total number of the casualties as we speak is 1,445. That's the number of persons who have died as a result of the COVID-19 infections. But we do know as of now that the new cases that we have, 3 of these cases out of the 7 are currently in the Greater Accra region. But the total figures that we are dealing with right now amounts to 74. And so that's the situation as we have it now in terms of our total active cases in terms of COVID-19, bringing you a breakdown of figures as you just seen gone by. But fortunately, we've been joined now via Zoom by some persons who will help us understand this. Let's first of all start off from the perspective of the Ghana Health Service. Fortunate to have Dr. Franklin Asiedu Bekwe, who's Director of Public Health at the Ghana Health Service. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this afternoon on The Pulse. So, first of all, we're getting indications that the president may be announcing some restrictions in terms of the land borders. Is it informed largely by the numbers that we're seeing, the fact that we have less than 100 active COVID-19 cases?
Yes, thank you very much. So I think you're talking about easing some of the restrictions.
Precisely. Yes.
Yes. So I think if you look at the data as of now, I think this is about the best data we have had for the past 2 years. But we've been somehow close to this era before. I mean, whereby we have very, very low figures, and then we have the advent of a variant, and there's a surge. But the only differentiating factor is that now we have vaccines. So prior to this period, we were not having vaccines, so people were not vaccinated. Now, as I speak, I would say that about 25% of Ghanaians are fully vaccinated. So there's a level of protection. So I think it's quite right if we try to do the easing whilst we try to monitor. So we are the best time to do some easing, but we still want to be very cautious.
And I'm glad that you're touching on that last leg of being cautious. The concern out there is also about the figures in our sub-region and neighboring countries as well. Is the Ghana Health Service mindful of these figures, and what lessons are you drawing from neighboring countries and what's happening there as well?
Yes, so if you look at the curves in ECOWAS, we normally have these ECOWAS meetings on every Tuesday. The shape of the curve is the same in all the neighboring countries. So the burden of disease in our neighboring countries is about the same as Ghana. So there's very little about dilution effect if you decide to open the borders. So I think that unlike before, that people were not testing, now we think that the case burdens on both sides of the borders are fine. So I think we can decide to ease. But I think that what we want to look at is how are you going to do the easing? So our main focus is about vaccination, because vaccination gives a level of protection, and that's what we want to focus on. So even if you decide to ease, you should have a borderline of being vaccinated before it goes borders.
I get the points there. Now, how about the protocols at the land borders? It has been one of the challenges for the Ghana Health Service as compared to the airports. It was easy installing safety mechanisms and trying to, as much as possible to check importation and persons who are coming into the country. But how's that going to be possible at the land borders? You agree it's going to be a very cumbersome exercise, isn't it?
Yes, so what we intend doing, you see, the land borders, we have port health, we have immigration, we have national security, they are all at the borders. So one critical thing we're going to be looking at is the vaccination cards. And then that's going to be the main tool to enable you cross. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at.
Explain that for me briefly. What you're going to have is that persons who need to move through the borders must possess certificates from where exactly?
Yes, what they are saying is that if we are going to be easing, we are not likely to be tested at the borders. What we're looking for, we're going to look for your possession of a vaccination card or vaccination identity. So that is what we're going to be inspecting on the borders.
How about
and that will be done by the immigration and then the port health staff across. So clearly, those are the things that we are considering. So unlike maybe the airport that we tested, we'll be looking at your possession of a vaccination card. But these are early days yet, and that is what we think that will be the game changer if you need to open the borders.
Indeed, and we'll come to some other aspects. Dr. Bakwe, just hold on for us. Also joining this conversation is Dr. Thomas Nava, Executive Director for the Africa Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis. Thank you, sir, for joining us on the pulse. So you've heard from the Ghana Health Service. They are proposing a number of mechanisms that will be put in place at Ghana's land borders. I'm sure that you've listened to a few of them. Are these measures sufficient? And what more should we be on the lookout for as we prepare to ease restrictions at these borders?
Yes, I've heard of some of the restrictions they're going to put at the land borders. But what I'm wondering is how they are going to implement this in a very porous borderline. Our land borders have several unapproved routes that people are using. And if anybody wants to dodge the payment of $150 to do a test before he comes in, then it's as much as hiring a motor that can take him through one of those unapproved routes to come in and pay him less than $20 to get into Ghana. So I think that what they have to do perhaps is to get the immigration service and the military or whoever to make sure anybody coming in should come in, but should come in through the approved route, or else it will come to naught if we put all these measures at the land borders and people still find their way through unapproved routes to come into the country.
That has been the difficulty for government as well. They've explained that over the years. But looking at the fact that we have reduced numbers, active cases somewhere around 74, is that not a significant work done by the health service for us to say we're comfortable now, at least let's go ahead and ease restrictions at the borders?
Work done by everybody, including the whole world. The numbers are going down everywhere. Countries that people were dying in thousands a day are virtually reduced to less than 100. So that is something good that we have to applaud everybody, and the contribution of all citizens in the world who abided by the guidelines of COVID-19. That notwithstanding, I can still say that perhaps we are not testing as we are supposed to test from the very beginning, because I don't remember the last time a COVID test was tested on anybody who has a cold or who has traveled and returned to Ghana in the community that I stay. I think that even the laboratories are still not spread across the country as we wish. Though WHO gave us a lot of funding to equip virtually all our district hospitals with sufficient equipment to diagnose COVID-19, we still have limited spaces for people to go and test for COVID-19. But all in all, I think that COVID-19 has come, and then people are beginning to understand it. We are understanding the management, so we don't have the fear of it again. We have the vaccine, as you said, 25% of Ghanaians are vaccinated. But we shouldn't forget that other people have got the COVID-19 without having symptoms. So they today work with some amount of immunity against COVID-19.
And Doc, these are critical matters that we have to explore. Fortunately, Dr. Bekwe Siedu is also on with us. So, Doctor, there's first of all the concern about Ghana's porous borders and the fact that even though you may be instituting checks at the land borders, there are a number of unapproved routes here in the country. How do you intend, for instance, if the president goes ahead to ease the restrictions, how do you intend to enforce compliance then?
So I think that the border is made up of several agencies. So we have the immigration, you have national security, you have customs, you have court health. So they are all together at that enclave, and they're working together to ensure that it's done. If you're talking about the unapproved routes, clearly it does fall in the domain of national security and immigration. But I think that it's early days yet. But what we want to say is that
precisely why I'm making the point, because they've been at the borders for some time now, and yet we've had people come through unapproved routes. The concern is that if a person carrying the virus, for instance, uses one of these routes, that may compromise the gains that you've made at the Ghana Health Service. So it has a bearing on your service, isn't it?
Yes, but what is good now is that, as I told you, if you look at the curves in ECOWAS countries, they are about the same on both sides. So we are not much. If you cross from, let's say, our country to our country, we are not likely to change our figures much. But as far as I'm concerned, national security and immigration will work as much as possible to ensure that we minimize this movement of persons through the unapproved routes. And then let me say that, you see, in terms of testing,
right,
the figures we are having here, there are two main reasons. One is that, a lot of people have been exposed to COVID, either indirect or direct. So there's some studies that there's a seroprevalence of about 70%. So meaning that about 70% of the population have been exposed. That gives us the level of immunity. And then we also have reasonable number of these people vaccinated. So somehow there's a lot of immunity built in the population. I mean,
are you then suggesting that we're closer to achieving herd immunity? Is that where we are getting to?
We don't have the clear evidence yet, but if you look at the studies being done, it tells you that clearly there's a lot of protection in the general population. And if you have, before it was clearly the Omicron got a lot of people exposed. So we're thinking that if a lot of people have been exposed, there's some level of antibodies have been built in them. And maybe that's the reason why we are not seeing so many cases. But COVID is not over yet. You may have a new variant appearing, but then what is good is that when you have a new variant and they have the level of protection or immunity, they are not likely to have any severe form of the disease or even get an infection. So that is what is good. So we as a service are still pushing so that Ghanaians get vaccinated, so that we build that level of immunity that's needed. If you look at other countries like the UK and the US, they are having, by evidence, about 60-70% of their population vaccinated. So in that case, when you are exposed to a new variant, you are not likely to get any severe form of the disease. And that's what we are pushing for. As far as I'm concerned, there have been countries that have been flip-flopping. You see, it depends on the exposure and the level of the viruses that come to you. We have been somehow consistent. So we don't normally just easily ease. We take our time and we ease gradually. So that's how we've taken some time. But I think that now the figures look quite good enough. And globally, it appears that the figures are on the low side. So that's why we will try to ease a bit. But I think that the president is the one who will give the final word. But I think as a service, it's a good time for us to do some easing.
I see, a good time to ease restrictions. How about the other engagements or approach that we know government adopted at the start of the whole fight against the pandemic? The president talked about checking further spread and also going ahead to track and then ensure that we immunize. That's the third leg of the approach. Are we going to give up on that now that we're seeing the cases drop, 74 active cases? Some say it's as though we don't even have COVID-19 in the country anymore. So are you giving up on that leg of the fight?
No. So as I said, there's a task force looking at the data and what needs to be done. So we have 3 levels. We have the vaccination, we have the PCR, we have the antigen. The idea is of which ones should be eased. And I think that clearly is being discussed. Hopefully the next few days will come clear the level of easing. As I said, there's a lot of discussion. What level of easing should go at the airport? What should go on at the land borders? And those are discussions. And the next few days will be clear about the level of easing. But I think that the data is reasonably good for us.
Right. While we may be happy at the gains that we've made now, there's also concerns about the super spreaders. One of them is the large occasions that we have and festivities. One of them is fast approaching, Easter as well. Are you keeping your eyes on that, and what protocols or measures are you putting in place to check that as well?
So we are pushing for the vaccine. So the next few weeks, we do another round of nationwide vaccination exercise. Because what we are focusing on is to make sure that the Ghanaian is protected by vaccine. At times, adhering to the protocols becomes challenging. But we think one sure way can offer protection is the vaccination. So we'll do another round of vaccination. We are hoping that particularly the urban areas, that are the key hotspots, will get people vaccinated, immunized. In that case, even if you need to get the infection, it will be of a lower level. The severity will also be on a lower level. So that is what we hope to do. And we also keep on preaching that let's maintain the distance, particularly if you are not vaccinated. And then you also need to wash your hands with soap and running water. So far as we don't have the total herd immunity, we still need to be abiding by the protocols.
Yes, but my concern is about Easter as well. Your eyes are on that, isn't it?
Yes. So we'll keep on engaging the Christian community. You know, the last time, they actually came clear with the set of protocols or guidelines to guide the general population. And I think that for COVID, you need to be looking on, your eyes have to be on the board on a daily basis. So anything can change. You know, the last, just a few months before the Xmas, we had very low figures. Then Omicron came and changes. So we'll keep on monitoring the situation and still be engaging the partners.
Right.
To be sure that we
Just
don't lose
before
focus.
and just before I bring in Dr. Nava, there's this final aspect about the general decline in adherence to the safety protocols. What's your message to Ghanaians out there who are of the opinion that we're out of the woods? Dr. Bekwe? Dr. Bekwe, if you can hear me, I'm asking that what would you say to Ghanaians, some of them who are not adhering to the protocol, saying that we're out of the woods at this moment?
No, for us, we are not out of the woods yet. You see, we only be out when WHO comes back and say that the pandemic is over. So far as WHO have not said we are out, we are not out. So we still push for adherence to protocol. But for us, what we are focusing on now is the vaccination. Vaccination, vaccinated. When you are vaccinated, then your chances of getting infection is minimal. Even if you get infected, you get less severe form of the disease. So let's vaccinate. And when, particularly if you are indoors, wear a mask. And I think that should be a main message.
I thought that would have been the last one, but I don't know if your attention has been drawn to this. Some videos or pictures circulating on social media indicating or alleging that some of the vaccines have expired. Are these claims true? Have you come across some of these things, and what do you have to say to them?
No, the vaccines never expired. You know, as far back as late last year, there were clear guidelines on how to use the Pfizer. So there was extension of the vaccines by 3 months. So it's a clear guideline, and we can never use expired vaccines. Let me say, as we speak now, we have over several vaccines around. You see, in the time past, there was scarcity of vaccines, and now vaccines are not scarce. There are a lot of them, and because of our good programs, partners are willing to give us more vaccines. So we will never use any expired vaccine on any Ghanaian.
Dr. Bekwe, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. Now let's wrap up with Dr. Thomas Nava, who is with the Africa Center for Health Policy and Research. So, Doc, here we are. The assurance is, yes, Easter may be approaching, but then we're keeping our eyes on vaccination. What's your final words and analysis on this matter?
No, thank you very much. Just happy that very soon they'll be opening the borders so that people can move freely and do business and get some income for their families. What I would advise is that we still all keep looking at WHO to finally declare that the pandemic is over. If that is not done, everybody should take himself very. If you are able to get a face mask and be in a crowd with a face mask, I would say if it's good, you still do it. Keeping hygiene is something good, whether there's COVID-19 pandemic or there's no pandemic. It's good to keep your hand hygiene and then the rest. And also, government should try as much as possible to make sure we get equipment in all districts to be able to diagnose COVID-19. The way it is never going to go away completely. It may not be a pandemic again, but it may have some local effects in some selected areas in the world, which we don't know whether Ghana will be part, so that hospitals can easily diagnose COVID-19, initiate treatment, so it doesn't become an epidemic in Ghana for us, while other countries are enjoying pandemic-free. Remember, one thing I'm happy he said in his speech is that a lot of people have had COVID-19 exposure already, which I tend to say some of us feel vindicated, because when we used to tell government that the number was more than what they were quoting, they didn't accept it. Today, one of the directors is telling us that they believe some of the things that is making the numbers reduce is because several people have already been exposed to it. And this was collaborated by the West African Center for Cellular Biology of Infectious Pathogens. That as at that time we were having less than 100,000, their research showed that almost 1 million Ghanaians have already been exposed to COVID-19. So once many people are exposed to it and many are taking the vaccines, very soon we'll be free to walk freely without face masks if it is worrying us. And at least we'll go back to business as normal, and then everybody can make ends meet.
Dr. Thomas Nava, thank you for joining us. Don't forget that we are also keeping our eyes on the Russia-Ukraine crisis, only 226 Ghanaians have successfully been evacuated from Ukraine following Russia's invasion. Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration says its officers are still monitoring the situation with a resolve to rescue more nationals from the war zone. We have that statement for you right now. SF's indicating that the Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration Ministry wishes to inform the general public that the evacuation of Ghanaian nationals from Ukraine is progressing steadily. To date, the government of Ghana has facilitated the evacuation of a total of 226 Ghanaians to Ghana. The evacuees, mostly students, were received upon arrival by various government officials, including officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. The statement continues to indicate on paragraph 3 or 4, I should say, that the government of Ghana, through its honorary consulate in Hungary, continues to monitor the situation and is redoubling efforts towards completing the evacuation of the remaining batch of students and other Ghanaians there. But what's more troubling is that the Foreign Affairs Ministry says it notes, quote, with concern that against the backdrop of the prevailing situation and notwithstanding the readiness of the government of Ghana to airlift whom our compatriots who have fled from the Ukrainian crisis, some of them are still unwilling to return. The government of Ghana wishes to seize the opportunity to express its profound gratitude to the international humanitarian organizations, religious bodies, and the IOM for their support. So there you have it, excerpts of the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, indicating what government has done so far in terms of the evacuation plan. But what you also need to be mindful of is the total number of Ghanaians who are resident in Ukraine. You need to get a breakdown of the figures. Here they are for you. A total of 1,200 persons were indicated at the start of the briefing by the Foreign Affairs Minister to be leaving, Ghanaians living in the war-torn Ukraine. But what we know is that 945 of them are students. Only 226, as we're getting from the statement, have arrived in Ghana. So what do we make of this? But as you also have it there, 527 nationals who have actually moved from Ukraine, have gone into neighboring countries around the war zone. Some are in Belarus and Romania, as we're getting from other sources as well. So we'll come back to the breakdown of the figures, but obviously this indication questions government's evacuation plan. Joining me now is Richard Kumado. He's a security consultant, helping us to understand all of this. So Richard, thank you for joining us on the poll. So first of all, what's your impression about what we've done so far? 226 out of a total of 1,200 persons that we're targeting to at least, if not all, bring some back home. Is the number encouraging in the first place?
Definitely, it's not encouraging, and you can understand the urgency of the issues here, that the complexity of what we are looking at, it makes it more difficult for government agencies to be able to coordinate the activities in Ukraine very effectively. The only way to mobilize these people is to coordinate the activities and bring them to a centralized position. Then there has been a decision on the part of individual Ghanaians there as to whether they will want to come home or they have some other plans, which is beyond what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs can do. I think we will need to be a bit more aggressive in mobilizing them. We need to be a bit more strategic in where we place them so that we can airlift them if that becomes an option on the table. Other than that, 200 out of the thousands we are talking about might not be sounding properly good.
If your argument is that 226 is not enough, the ministry is indicating in their statement as well that upon efforts that they're making to bring back some of our compatriots home, they're not willing even to come back to Ghana. So that's also a challenge, you agree?
Definitely, I agree with that. And remember, it's not all of them that are students. And even if they are students, it might not be all of them that are on government scholarship. So government cannot single-handedly take a decision for them. What we will need to do in the face of whatever is happening in Ukraine that has become a spillover to what we are talking about, we will need to coordinate and collaborate a bit more with the countries they are in to ensure that at least their safety and security is granted. If that is done, individuals have the right to take their own decisions. But we must ensure that nothing untoward happens to any Ghanaian. Government will come under fire should we be recording deaths of people. And it's also the need that our people, irrespective of the condition they are in, must work with the appropriate authorities Ghana has put in place to be able to leave Ukraine, at least to a safer place where decisions as to whether they are coming home or not.
Right, so your concern is about moving Ghanaians into safety, whether it's back here or the neighboring countries. But what we do know is that government also indicates that it's redoubling its efforts in trying to bring back some more persons home. What approach should we adopt at this moment, knowing that some persons are refusing to come back home?
Number one, they will need a psychological rehab. And number two, we will need to move them to a safer place where we'll make resources available to easily move them home, especially those who are willing to come. Then number three, those who don't want to come will need a bit more motivation to really understand the need for coming home. Then this also goes beyond the psychology of why people will want to leave Ghana and seek greener pastures elsewhere. If that is done, I believe these three steps will help us to uplift a little bit more people who are willing to come home, at least to safety, before we consider those who might not be wanting to come home.
What consideration should be given to persons who are returning out? Over 200 of them. Is there any security implication for not just the people coming back home, but also for us? Should we be worried that these persons are coming right from a war-torn area?
Definitely, brother, because there's psychological warfare in their mind. They are traumatized. There might even be some people who have taken part in the early stages of the war who might want to vent their anger on us as a Ghanaian or as a people who have not treated them well. That is why they find themselves there. They will need a bit more of monitoring. They will need a bit more of surveillance. They will need a bit more of coaching and counseling in order to let them settle in as quickly as possible. And I believe that is done. We will be able to have them safely here. But home is home. They should come back home. And once they are here, they should find a way of rebooting their life.
While at that, there are many who express doubts over the possibility of even having all the 1,200 return. How much more do you think we can do in terms of the evacuation program? What's your estimation?
I would be happy if government could bring in about 1,000 people. I would be happy if government could.
Is that feasible? Is that really a feasible number that you're looking at?
If you look at our neighboring Nigeria, some people are making their private jets available. Private individuals are making resources available at the disposal of government. And people are making private arrangements to bring their citizens back home. Their numbers might be more than that, but if government engage the public sector, we can have private airlines bringing our people home, which will lessen the burden of government. We can have some other arrangements with some other people who might be willing to do extra in order to persuade our people in coming back home, or create an avenue for them to get into some other countries where their safety and security can be granted. And once these assurances can be provided and people begin to have hope and believe in them, they will buy into it. Other than that, bringing the numbers down as 226, it might not be sounding properly, it might not be looking so good.
And on the sides of this, we're also witnessing some trolls on social media, which some experts say we shouldn't take lightly. What we see, the attribute of many Ghanaian youth expressing interest in taking advantage of Ukraine's window to have more recruits into their military. There are many who are volunteering right from Africa to join the fight as a way of evading what they say are hard times in this country. Does that really paint a picture of the security situation here in our country?
I get worried. I was very worried. It's disposition, it's reorientation they needed. They would have put them in the front line and they would have used them as body bags. They would have died in that war. They wouldn't benefit. Go back to our history and check World War I and World War II. Even the proper and professional soldiers who fought along the British, what has been the reward system for them? Right. We will need to tread cautiously. We will need to be a bit more circumspect in some of these things. And we should not allow our people to go to Ukraine to fight for the Ukrainians. Even if they do, it should be soldiers who are well prepared, who are well trained, and who know what the terrain is. Civilians They might die in the course of war and might not make any benefit.
Some say they may be rewarded by the Ukrainian government. I'm sure you've seen all of these funny comments on social media as well. Is this far-fetched for someone to even think like that?
No. But see, I'm a security consultant. I wouldn't want any of my family members to rent out.
Right.
I support the East. I support the West. What is happening in Ukraine is a bit more complicated, and we need to protect our people. We will need, even the number one sniper from Canada landed in Ukraine, and within few minutes into his action, he was taken down by the special forces of Russia. We will need to tread cautiously. I know people want to make fun, people are looking for jobs, people need money, people want to travel abroad, but let us do it properly so that we don't become more vulnerable and create many more vulnerabilities for ourselves, please.
Security consultant Richard Kumado, thank you for joining us on The Pulse. Let's take you to Parliament now. Ranking member on Parliament's Mines and Energy Committee, John Jinapor, is demanding the immediate dissolution of government's economic management team over what he says is its failure to take steps to cushion consumers in the wake of the rising fuel prices. Mr. Jinapor insists rising global prices cannot be a justification for the state of affairs, since government can utilize the stabilization fund to immunize the impact on Ghanaians.
The economic management team under Dr. Bawumia has failed woefully. Indeed, they have run out of ideas. The vice president has gone into comatose. He is nowhere to be found. This is the time he has to demonstrate leadership. This is the time government must show that it cares for the people. All we hear government doing is whining and whining and whining. We believe that something must be done. That is why the minority and the Mines and Energy Committee in particular is calling on the Akufo-Addo administration to sit up and take pragmatic steps towards ensuring that they cushion the ordinary Ghanaian failure. We call on President Akufo-Addo to dissolve the economic management team because they have not lived up to expectation. Indeed, if I were the vice president, what I will be doing is to tender in my resignation as head of the economic management team.
Well, so that's John Jinapor indicating the position of minority on this matter. Government and its appointees and some of the functionaries within the NPP are not really happy about the position of the minority. Joining us now is Daniel Ochema-Boakye. He is the former government spokesperson on finance, also monitoring a lot of developments. As we understand, you saw the tweet by the information minister there indicating that the government is also having separate meetings on what to do to cushion Ghanaians. So, Daniel Ochema-Boakye, I'm grateful that you're joining us at this moment. Let's first of all deal with the concerns coming through from Parliament. It appears that we've heard from the Vice President at the start of this government where he indicated that you have a solid economic management team. Where are the people now and why are they not cushioning us in these troubling times?
Well, let me say good afternoon to you and thank you for the opportunity. I think my friend Honorable Jinapor is just rushing and talking, knowing that there is a meeting that is already going on as to how government is going to intervene. This government has intervened a lot. You know, they're just really rushing to try to say that the government is doing nothing so that they can get the sympathy of Ghanaians. And don't forget, our opposition is looking for opportunity to come to power. And that is my greatest fear because they've never done well every time they have the opportunity. And I think they are becoming insensitive as well. Sensitive in the sense that how do you fight against the government's ability to raise money, or how do you fight against 2022 budget and still expect government to immediately respond to this crisis? The entire world is suffering from increasing prices. Of course, I run transport right now, but to be honest with you, people are suffering. But I believe the government is thinking about what they can do. Does the government even have the money? So you can't go at one end and begin to, deprive the government of the support it needs to raise money, and come on the other end.
But I thought you had the plan when you took over the reins of power. You indicated to the people of Ghana that you were in to solve our economic challenges. You were elected to fix the problem. That's what the president told us.
that debate has always been, that debate has always been done. We've always won it. We won a second term because the government performed, or the government was performing until before COVID, until before this crisis. The government was doing fantastic. We dealt with the energy crisis. You and I have been enjoying light for at least 5 years. We dealt with the financial crisis that cost Ghana more than 20 billion Ghana cedis. We took Ghana out of IMF. Under the mess that we inherited from NDC, the GDP grew from 3.4% to about 7% on average. So it hasn't been a hopeless.
And all these things all these things you have done have come to naught. Here we are today. There's a big question facing government whether or not to return to the IMF.
Well,
so it appears that you've not really done anything, have you?
I totally disagree to say that it's come to naught. To be honest with you, if we were in the NDC, this Ghana country for Ghana may not be there. So
what do you mean by that statement?
I am saying that things will have been worse. Maybe COVID will have killed all of us because we know them. We know them. So, yes, it was because we're doing well. That is why the impact that we have felt hasn't been so bad. If it was under NDC, trust me. So NDC cannot go on one side of the river, upstream, mess up the water, come down and ask who messed up the water.
But I'm sorry, is this all about the NDC? This is about the figures that we're talking about today. You're in need of over 100 billion. You've not been able to get any closer in terms of your revenue targets. We're in a very dire straits now in terms of our economic condition. These are the facts that face you today. Whether you like it or not, we as a country are expecting that government will fix the problem.
We are not running away from the facts. In fact, we've always done well.
But you had the minority ask the question, for instance, where's the vice president? Why are we not seeing him address us on all of these issues?
And that is why I'm saying that apart from the minority, my own friend, Honorable Janapo, being insensitive to what Ghanaians are going through, and I would say mocking at Ghanaians at this time, the president and the team are thinking, they are meeting, and I'm sure you are aware about that. So they shouldn't be rushing. They are rushing to nothing. They just want to lead the government and just trying to throw something out there. So that is what they do with politics. And this is very, very sensitive time. You can't do that. You can't play on people's emotion. It's difficult. I'm a businessman running businesses right now. The dollar is almost messed up before what is going on. Prices of goods and services are increasing by the day. These are challenging times. See what America is doing. The US is increasing what they call it, borrowing rates so that they could control the inflation. So let's see what the government is doing.
Are you not setting double standards? Are you not setting double standards? We've seen a plethora of tweets by the president and also the vice president now, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, talk about how the erstwhile administration was not able to manage the depreciation of the cedi. Today, we find ourselves in the same space. So, and even worse, as some would argue. So,
let me say this.
So are you not setting double standards then?
No, we are not. No, we are not, honestly speaking. We are not setting double standards. People will say, we said the money is here in Ghana. Where is the money?
But you said that. These are, it's not as though we're making them up. You said you made these comments as a political party.
My friend, I think you want us to have a conversation.
Yes,
so when you are
precisely.
speaking, I keep quiet. So please give me a chance to also explain. So when the vice president some time ago said that there's money in Ghana, if you ask me, it's totally true. There's money in Ghana. If you change how you handle your agricultural supply chain, you will make a lot of money, right? If you deal with corruption, you will make a lot of money. The monies are here. We just have to start doing much more to control and make sure that we keep the money. Okay, so the argument about, if you ask me, the argument about using the price of fuel and even the dollar exchange rate, especially because we are so much dependent on foreign goods and services, I think that should be out of our politics. I mean, whether it's MPP that is using it or that has used it in the past, or NDC that want to play the same take it, whatever it is. I think that politics of fuel prices and foreign exchange should be out, to be honest with you. Because given the nature of our economy, until we change things, until one factory, one district, or one factory begins to take shape and we are producing a lot of things that we do use and flip and whatever it is here, and we require dollars to import these things, we're still going to suffer this problem.
Okay.
So yes. Go ahead.
Right. You are also quite close to the powers that be in the NPP. Here we are today. There's a cabinet meeting. In fact, we understand that that those discussions started way last night or yesterday. The consultations are ongoing. What's really your position on the division within your party? Some saying, well, let's go back to the IMF. We've had, for instance, the former ranking on the finance committee, Marcus Ibieba, talk about the fact that there's a need for us to turn to the IMF at this point. What's your personal take also on these different opinions that we're seeing within the NPP?
And that was my chairman of the finance committee,
right.
Dr. And let me say good afternoon to him. I totally disagree with his position, even though I respect his opinion a lot. I think it's not time to do that at all, given the conditionalities that come with IMF. Why can't we try something interim first? I am not against going to IMF ultimately, but we need to try a few other things first. So I totally disagree with him on that position. We are not divided. He only expressed his personal opinion. And I think that should be respected from where he sits. But I disagree. I don't think it's time for us to go there. There are a lot of opportunities that we need to exploit first and begin to try to understand how we will be able to take care of ourselves by paying more to do more. I used to prepare taxes in the US when I was there. I lived there for about 14 years. In the US, if you add federal tax, state tax, local taxes, people pay close to about 40%. Until you do your tax returns, you don't get any refund. So if we really want to develop, yes, people are calling for employment for the youth. I support that. We are calling for development. That is rightly so. We are calling for a lot of things. But at some point in time, we need to support to pay for these things.
Yeah, and you're supporting by paying taxes. That's your policy advice. But this goes contrary to the promise that you made. You said we were moving from a taxation-dependent economy to a production-centered economy. That's what you told the people of Ghana, right?
And that's exactly what we are doing. We never said we will never impose taxes. When we came to power, there were about some 26 or so taxes that NDC had, executed. And we changed or amended or even deleted about 17 of those taxes. All right? We never said we never impose taxes. All right? So some of those taxes we had to change or we had to even demolish. And that's why we used to call them nuisance taxes. So we did that. And that was necessary for us to be able to ensure that things are doing well. And we said that let's do a few other things to also make sure Ghanaian economy is doing well. Under NDC, businesses were borrowing at 35%. Even the government itself under NDC borrowed from a bank, UBA bank, using the Ghana Road Fund as a, as a collateral to borrow at the rate of 32%. Today, even though the rates are going up, it's about 20, 21, depending on what your credit risk is. So we have done something. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we are going through.
If you're attributing
Ukraine war.
And I'm sorry if you are sorry for cutting through, but if you're attributing these things to COVID-19, we've heard recently from Pierre Laporte, who's the country director for the World Bank, indicating that the signs, quote, the signs were there ahead of the economic crunch that we're witnessing during the pandemic. So it appears that it's not all about COVID-19, if you, as we've heard from government and some of you within the NPP.
I like the way you put it. I like the way you put it. It's not all about COVID-19, but COVID-19 is part of it. The signs were there because we were getting out of NDC's mess. And we're just on a trajectory to continue to do well and sustain. What you do is that you come in, determine the extent of the problem, you begin to solve it. And we had begun solving it and the numbers were turning around. So, and NDC's mess or 8 years of NDC's mess, you cannot just take one time to change it. That was totally impossible. So you had to plan and spend prudently and begin to deal with corruption, deal with whatever, deal with the mess, take or pay issues, light off, youth unemployment, the various mess, energy crisis, financial instability, begin to get it right.
And yet the figures today tell us that we're doing worse than before. So
the good thing is that you have economic management team or even the Minister of Finance or the government that has its head above its shoulders. We know what to do and we have the men. So that is a promise. I mean, that is a good thing that we have. It isn't that we don't know what the challenges are. We know the causes of this issue. mostly external. And we just take time, think about it, and begin to deal with it, one after the other. Trust me, whatever is going on regardless, and this is caused by mostly external factors, whatever is going on right now in Ghana, I think the best government, given that we only have two, MPP, NDC, that is capable of dealing with this current crisis and even going forward, is MPP.
So you're saying that, so Daniel Ochemba-Boaji, it is your argument that in spite of this abysmal economic performance that we've witnessed, and I'm not saying that from my personal opinion, from the figures that we have, we're recording the worst rate of development ever, and these are the figures that we have. Based on this verdict, you're still asking the people of Ghana to go ahead and vote for the NPP again?
It's scary. Like the most fearful thing that I sit and live with every day is to have NDC come back to power anytime soon. Yeah, Ghana is not at a point where we can experiment again. We in MPP have to do whatever it takes legally, deliver on our promise, show good progress, unite the party more, and cross over the 80. NDC will mess up this country if they get a second opportunity. I don't have any single trust in what their ability to fix the challenges. So regardless of the challenge, by the way, I like the way you also put it, except to say that you decided probably not to tell us the full story, even though you had a sentence to do that. Yes, there are problems, but why? If you know how, you always have a job. But if you know why, you'll be a leader. Why are the numbers not looking good? That is the part that we have to tell Ghanaians. Otherwise, we'll be lying. We'll be telling the story halfway. And that is not true. There are two sides to the coin. Yes, the numbers may not be good, but why? There are reasons. And we are willing to deal with it heads on, no problem. Continue, go back, take a second look, and begin to walk the way. And by the way, we don't always, every time there's a problem, for me and for many of my team that I work with, it's opportunity for improvement.
Okay.
We can just go back and do better.
Right.
So I believe in the economic management team. I believe the NDC should be more responsible and supportive and sensitive to the plight of Ghanaians.
Right.
I believe they will come up with a solution that, given time,
we'll probe that. There's a need for us to probe that as well. In fact, you're doing all of this for the people of Ghana. We've been asking them on social media, trying to put up a poll on what Ghanaians actually think about this. As government holds retreat on dealing with the economic difficulties, what options would you go for? An IMF bailout or the e-levy? Just take a look at that. Significant. 68.3% say we need to go back to austerity measures. Just 30.7% are telling us that 31.7% are actually telling us that we ought to rely on the e-levy. So it appears that if the president has to be guided by this JoyNews polls that we're putting up on social media, it is clear what the president would have to tilt to, a return to the IMF. Why is it so hard for the president to opt for that, really? I mean, judging from this poll, the Ghanaians are saying go back to the IMF.
I respect the opinions of those who have expressed their views via the social media over the question that asked. I just don't know the composition. But to be honest with you, if I was in the opposition, I'll be assembling a lot of people to go and vote. But NDC want to have equalization. So they were assembled soldiers on the social media to vote. That said, I am not against IMF. I'm just saying that it is not time. Time to go to IMF is not now. Probably the time is some other time o'clock, not now.
Okay, then.
So I respect the opinion. I don't know how scientific this might be, but as we see
now you're doubting the figures.
Yeah, obviously, I have no reason to doubt.
These are figures. Facts don't lie, right? The figures don't lie, right?
No, I'm also expressing my opinion. If I were able to
and what's significant about this is that this was posted less than 2 hours ago. So look at the significant trend of those who are backing the IMF return. That's significant, isn't it?
Leadership is hard. Sometimes you know where you're taking the people.
Okay.
But there could be many Thomases.
Right.
You have to lead them on.
Right. Daniel Ochema-Boji, I'm afraid we don't have all of the time. We'll sure have this conversation once more, but thank you for joining us here.
You're very welcome.
On The Pulse. We are still monitoring events that are developing and unfolding in Parliament as well. The Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Penyumakin, has been jumping to the defense of that, indicating that the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, will address the House next week on challenges facing the economy. Listen.
The Minister of Health has 10 questions. He has to come and tell us the progress made so far, the interventions by government. All these members are expectant. And then, of course, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister has 12 questions. We know the challenging times we find ourselves, but we believe that he would make it and explain government financial policy.
And 9 days ago, the Supreme Court settled a contentious matter. A Deputy Speaker of Parliament can vote while presiding and be counted as part of the quorum required for decision-making. This has since turned into a major impediment for government business. Now, the NDC MPs have successfully blocked government's business on 5 separate occasions, including the approval of a 20 million loan facility. Listen to the debate which ensued today as an attempt was made by the House to take a certain decision.
I'm saying that it is very rich. It's very rich for him to suddenly.
Is it for me?
It is very rich for him to suddenly, after considering motion 33, because we just took a decision on motion 33, which he had no objection. That immediately after, he has a problem with the next motion. Mr. Speaker, I find it very rich. Then, too, he now says that the basis of us proceeding, the basis of us, can you sit down for me to finish? The basis for us proceeding is not right. And the Constitution, and the Constitution, and the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, all the submissions he raised, I don't know what legal point he raised. Is it the case that you are arresting the motion? Is that what you are doing? If you are doing so, say so. Are you arresting the motion? Is that what you are doing? If you are doing so, say so.
Drawing the House attention that when I'm just walking in, that when 33 was taken, we equally didn't have the number. You said that because you just said that you just took this. And if that is the case, unless it can be proven that after this one member stepped out, that one has to be stood down. That one we didn't have the number. Take that one too.
So we are reversing.
So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to draw your attention that both 33 and what you intend to do now do not have the numbers to take that decision. And therefore, that decision that was purported to have been taken on 33 should be rescinded because the numbers were not there. Now that you are raising it, unless you can prove that members stepped out, that means it was equally taken wrongly. And therefore, we need to rescind that decision.
Now, the House was left with no choice but to adjourn proceedings. But Deputy Speaker Joe Wise, who was presiding, served notice the records of the House will only capture persons who are present in the House henceforth.
Speaker, there should be calm. I think that we have done enough for the day. And I want to thank my colleagues for their cooperation. So, Speaker, under the circumstance, I will want to move for at least all the items that we had agreed to deal with has been dealt with. We've done the 2 statements, 1 apiece. We've moved the motion, the question has been put. So, Speaker, I want to move that the House is adjourned to Tuesday in the forenoon.
Under the circumstances, I second that we adjourn. I second that we adjourn to Tuesday.
The motion for adjournment has been moved and seconded. I'm directing that only members of parliament who are here now are the ones whose name should appear in the vote of proceedings for today, unless there's evidence that somebody has been in and gone out. I would not accept a situation where we come on Tuesday and we have a list of 200 people present when we never had the number to take a decision. So please ensure that members who have been in only, committee meeting is not plenary sitting. So whether the person wrote his name or not, if he's not in the chamber, please make sure he or her is marked absent.
Now, Majority Chief Whip Frank Anodompe tells JoyNews NPP MPs must show up for work to support government business.
And then, surprises are sprung on the floor, sometimes very worrying. But going forward, obviously, it's a concern that we have to deal with. If government business has to be prosecuted smoothly, then we have to find a way of dealing with that, coupled with the fact that we also need to get our numbers in. So
the point is being made that if your colleagues were showing up, this issue would not come up at all. I mean, that is a concern for you as a whip.
It's an internal concern for us. We'll deal with it. I don't want to justify that. With the internal elections going on, the current internal elections going on is also affecting it. But that cannot be cited as a reason for them not to show up. So we'll deal with it.
And thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. When we return, we'll talk about the imminent food shortage. Stay with us here on the JoyNews channel. Welcome back to The Pulse. This afternoon, there's a major threat to Ghana's food security as local crop production faces a double hurdle of imminent fertilizer shortage and predictions of prolonged drought. Government has revealed it may not be able to meet even half of the budgeted fertilizer for this year. This revelation comes just days after peasant farmers threatened to move away from the production of grains and cereals following the 15% slash of subsidy for fertilizer by government. Speaking on the business edition of PM Express on the JoyNews channel, Deputy Minister for Agriculture Frimpong Ado said the Russian-Ukrainian war is partly to blame.
Those two countries together, I think, account for over 60% of the world supply of chemical fertilizer. And chemical fertilizer is in short supply all around the world. We started not today from the era of the COVID, the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. So the war broke, yes. Even before the outbreak of this war, we realized that the cost of fertilizers were going up before the outbreak.
How bad is the situation?
At the moment, it's very bad because what we budgeted for fertilizer supplies for this year in the 2022 budget, I can tell you that the amount that we require, we may not be able to supply even half of it because of the price differentials. We are doing some serious consideration of a whole lot of things.
Meanwhile, the Meteorological Agency is predicting a slightly longer dry weather period for the 2022 farming season. Now, a late onset of rains and mostly normal cessations are actually expected for Ghanaian farmers. The forecast actually raises a red flag. So what can actually be done to mitigate the impact of this adverse weather condition? Here is the Deputy Director for Research and Applied Meteorology at the Ghana Meteorological Service, Francisca Marty.
We expect a longer dry spell and then normal to late station. It means that we can get dry places at the coast because we're expecting below normal to normal cumulative rainfall. So we can get dry places at the coast, but the middle belt, we're expecting normal values. But the problem will be if we are having breaks within the rainfall that are longer than normal. If you have longer spells, it means that we are going to have a bit of a challenge because our crops will need consistent equal rainfall amounts. If it rains today and then there's a long break and then rains again, the crops don't need that. We should use more of irrigation, and then the dams around us, we should use them to start before the rain setting. Otherwise, then it's going to push our cropping season a bit late, and that will not augur well for us.
Well, so let's have a conversation on this matter. Obviously, there's a need for us to consider the factors that we need to work on to address this imminent food shortage. Dr. Charles Nava is the Executive Director for the Peasant Farmers Association, joining us now in studio. It's good to see you, Doc. Join us on a Friday. We know that you have quite a lot on your hands, but we're grateful that you're joining us. So
thank you.
Paint the picture for us. Where are we in terms of our food security status as a country?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by maybe congratulating the Deputy Agric Minister for his admission that the situation on the field is not that good.
Okay.
Because this then gives us space to plan as to how to address it. But if consistently we keep trying to paint a picture that all is well, when in reality the situation is no good, it's a bit problematic. So as we stand, our food security situation related to cereals and legumes on the field is not that good. If you take a commodity like maize, which is a #1 food staple, almost every household consumes at least maize or maize-related product once a week. You go to major maize-producing areas, and as we speak, there is shortage. Apart from the prices being very, very high, beyond the affordability of ordinary consumer, the product is not even there. You take sorghum, which poultry industry and the nursery and other food processing companies are relying on, it's not there. Prices are so high. You take sorghum, of which produce processing company like Guinness Ghana are dependent on, there is zero shortage. So that's where we are now. Now, our fear is not even what we are facing now. Because if you look at last year, at least the rains were a bit stable. There was fertilizer. The problem we faced was shortage and then the price. But even with last year prices, this year, with government subsidy, it's about 200% increase. And apart from that, the ministry admitted that even what is allocated for the subsidy, we might not get it. So that suggests that it has serious implications on cost of production. And usually farmers are rational beings. So when they see their cost of production is high and their profit margins likely to be zero, they will either change to other enterprises
or they may not even produce
or reduce their farm sizes or produce without applying fertilizer.
And this may worsen the situation. Correct me if I'm wrong, because as a nation, we are heavily reliant on importing, for instance, rice, which is another staple as well. So if maize is not complementing the intake, that would be a big challenge for us as a nation.
We depend on 65% importation of rice. The local production is 35%. So, and issues of fertilizer-related issues, fuel, mechanization, pesticides, insecticides. Commodities like rice and maize depend so much on availability of these commodities to be able to produce and yield well. So if prices of these commodities are so high, in some occasions, even not available, it means that it will definitely affect productivity.
The Agric Minister, and we've heard the Agric Minister speak on a number of occasions, he said that the country is secure. I mean, in terms of food security, we've heard him countless times. In recent days, not less than a week ago, he's been on a number of platforms reiterating the same position. Is the minister right in making such projections for the nation?
Yeah, so I think maybe that is the information he got, or that is his personal feeling. I don't want to 100% dispute what he said, because I don't know his source of information, because he failed to actually reveal the source of data he's using to explain to all of us. But as a practitioner who has been dealing with the farmers day in and out, I've spoken to farmers from all these food growing areas, from Wenchi, Techima, Nkranza, Kintampo, go to Northern Pai, Gusiegu, Karga, Northern Tamale itself, go to Upper East, you talk of Fumbisi, Yarba, Gulumbilisi, you go to Western region, Tumu, we depend so much on maize. All these areas, farmers are lamenting, consumers are lamenting, the markets are almost empty. There's nothing there. Now, I also heard this afternoon that government said they are managing what we have. That is what surprises me, because I'm not aware of any food stock that government stored somewhere to be released during the lean season. Yeah, government said they are managing what they have. So I don't really know whether we are talking about what is to be imported or what we are managing. So to me, the situation is not good. And I think that all of us need to come together and reason with the farmers, because we have some plans in place to see how best we'll be able to actually improve a bit in going forward.
But what should we be on the lookout for? Because Ghanaians out there are wondering, are we moving into a state where there'll be no food for us?
No,
is that the case?
Now let me make this distinction.
Yes, very clear, so we understand what's happening.
You see, even though we are talking about food shortages, our predictions are based on cereals and legumes. And these commodities depend so much on the use of agrochemicals and fertilizer. But when you take commodities like tubers, roots like cassava, others like plantain and what have you, those commodities do not actually depend so much on fertilizer. So our suggestion is that all of us should actually change our taste to begin eating more of tuber, cassava-related commodities. If you do that, then the pressure on maize and rice would have gone down.
Well, changing taste and what it is that is of one's preference, it will take some time to happen.
Yeah.
So that's why, in the meantime, there are a lot of people on the lookout for what policy measures would best address the challenge that we're facing.
In the very short run, you know, there was a release by the Minister of Finance that all ministries and departments should cut their budget by 20%.
Okay.
We are suggesting that Ministry of Food and Agriculture should be excluded. Now, even though government is facing difficulties, when UTAC members stayed in the house for more than 1 month, government found money to top up for them to go back to the classroom. We are talking about food security. So we are suggesting that no matter how hard it is for government, they should find money and subsidize inputs for farmers. For us, we are doing our best. We have started sensitizing our members to go into using organic manure, using compost, and try to adopt agroecology farming practices. These kind of practices, we do not rely so much on external inputs.
And I get the point you're making, because what we're likely to see is that if government goes through with the implementation of this 25% cut in all government expenditure, it will therefore mean that their Greek ministry would have to cut down by some 25% how much they give in subsidies for fertilizer. And so you want that restored in full, or what percentage are you looking
That should be restored. And additional budget allocation should be located to Ministry of Food and Agriculture. The taking of fertilizer subsidy is no-go area. Even the current reduction to 15%, we don't support it. And we are planning to see whether we can engage Ministry of Finance and justify to him the reason why we think the 15% is not enough. Look, and we are doing this not just for the farmer. We are doing this for you and your family. We are doing this for the ordinary consumer. So when we talk, all of us need to actually add our voice. Because when the farmer produces, how much can that farmer consume? I still have enough maize in my warehouse. I cannot finish consuming it with my family. I have to bring it to the market for others to buy. But if the commodity is not there, where will you get it to buy? And it's simple demand and supply theory. When demand is higher than supply, prices will go high. In our case, the supply is not even there. So what we need to do is all of us to find ways of putting more resources in the hands of the farmer. If the farmer is able to make some small margin, the rest of the produce is going to the consumer.
And I guess the idea about subsidizing fertilizer has been the point about stimulating the agro industry. Why don't we look at other measures? That the argument has been that the subsidies on fertilizer has not been utilized well by the farmers. There are still cases of what do you call it? People taking the fertilizer into smuggling them into neighboring countries. And we've seen other activities go on, which is obviously not a judicious use of government subsidies. So why not channel that fund or the monies that we're getting into other areas within the same sector?
Yeah, so it's all planning and taking inputs of stakeholders. But as we stand, a very short measure is not that alternative. Because the season is starting next month or two for Northern Ghana. The Southern Ghana, we've already started. And that's why we are saying that the alternative is agroecology. Okay. And then producing our own compost. But we cannot do that at this moment. So what we need to do is the money that we put there for the farmers to produce in this moment for us for this year and next year. Then as we are going into the next budgeting season, government will now plan and put in place how we'll be able to set up agro-based industries that will produce some of these inputs in country. Because we cannot continue to depend on the West. Because Ukraine-Russia conflict shouldn't have anything to do with Africa, and for that matter, Ghana. Because all our soils are rich. We can produce all what we want.
You feel that excuse is not tenable? Government saying, well, partly of
that's what I'm saying.
Now
it's lack of planning. That's why it's affecting us.
You're challenging that fact?
Yes. The point I'm making is that if government had planned well, then we shouldn't even be afraid if Ukraine and Russia are having fight, because we equally have fertile soils that we can produce for consumption and for export. But because we've not planned properly and we continue to depend on the West, any slightest change in their economy affecting us. And that's why when COVID set in, we have been struggling to produce common commodities that we could have done in country. That's our point.
Are we likely to see any engagement between your association and government to address this imminent crisis?
Yes, of course. Not only our association, all the actors in the agriculture sector, the CSOs, you talk of General Agriculture Workers Union, Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana, Food Sovereignty Ghana, Rice Millers Association, all of them. We have started talking amongst ourselves. And our doors are open. We will soon be contacting not only the Ministry of Food and Agri, but the Ministry of Finance as well. Because we think...
You want to meet the finance minister?
Of course, because we think that there's no more time for us to sit and wait for these politics and then long talk. We need to let them understand that the situation is no good, and we all need to come together and see how best we'll be able to contribute our inputs to transform the sector.
How soon are we seeing that?
We are planning, and then hopefully, if they open their doors for us, at least next week should be fine with us. Yeah.
Doc, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us here on The Pulse. And it's a wrap for The Pulse for this week. Be sure to join us same time next week. My name is Blessed Sugan. Don't forget to log on to myjoyonline.com for more updates.